Hello everyone and welcome back to this new video. I am really excited for this video because it is my first video tutorial and even more excited because it is on GraphQL. I literally fell in love with GraphQL once I learned it and made my first project with GraphQL. And in this video, I'm going to help you understand all the basics of GraphQL, whether it is setting up GraphQL, type definitions, resolvers, queries, mutations. We will be covering all the good stuff of GraphQL and it will be done by making a project. Nothing big project, but it is a good point to get started on GraphQL. And before we actually start making our project, I highly recommend you to read my blog post on GraphQL. It will give you some great insights on what is GraphQL, why we might need GraphQL, and some other things related to GraphQL. This will basically prepare the ground, and after that we can start working on our actual coding project. And so yes, this is a quick intro of what we will be doing, and let's start. Very excited. Alright everyone, let's begin with our video on GraphQL. First of all, these are the things that we are going to cover in this video. We are going to start by knowing what is GraphQL and why we might need GraphQL. Then we are going to set up a GraphQL server, and we are going to investigate what are type definitions and resolvers, and then we are going to work with queries in GraphQL, and last but not the least, mutations in GraphQL. So let's begin with what is GraphQL and why we might need GraphQL. Here are the what and why. So what is GraphQL? GraphQL is basically a query language which can be used for fetching and manipulating data. But there's one thing that I want to make it clear straight away, and it is that GraphQL is not same as SQL. SQL is also a query language, but it is for databases, whereas GraphQL is a query language which is made for a backend server. Whenever we write GraphQL queries, we are basically instructing a backend server to either fetch us the data or help us manipulate the data. But as you might know that we already have a good way of interacting with a backend server, and it is REST APIs. So one may ask why we need GraphQL at all. It is because REST APIs in some cases might have two main setbacks. These are too many server requests, because when our data grows bigger and bigger, and if our data gets nested more and more, then in order to fetch all the information we might have to make too many requests, and that might increase the load on server. And the second big problem is that, let me explain it with the help of an example. That let's suppose that the response of a REST API is an object which has 12 properties, but I need only 3 properties currently. So all those 9 properties are redundant. I don't need those 9 properties, but REST APIs will still return those 9 properties. And it turns out that GraphQL provides a very elegant solution for both of these problems. And if you want to know more about what and why of GraphQL, you can check out my blog on garvijjainmalu.com. Okay everyone, so now we are going to set up our project, and in this project we will be using TypeScript. So let us initialize our project using the command npm init-y. It will create npm project. Here is my package.json file, and now I am going to install TypeScript in this project, and it will be a dev dependency, so save dev. And along with TypeScript, there are a few tools that we will be using, and the first one is tsc watch. It is basically a tool that will help us to compile our TypeScript code into JavaScript code. So this is one tool that we will be using, and we will also need so first let's install these two packages. Okay, so it turns out that it has been installed, And as I was talking, I just remember that we will be using TS node also. TS node, because we will be running our code in a node environment, and because it is a TypeScript code, so yeah, TS node package will also be required. Save dev. I will allow it to install. Should be installed pretty quick. Okay, so here we go. Now we are going to initialize our TypeScript. We are going to configure it. So tsc init, it will create a ts config file. And here are just two main configurations that we have to do. And the first one is in root dir. I'm going to enable this. So here we are going to specify src. So basically what it means is that the entry point means all our TypeScript code will be stored in a folder called src, and that will be the root directory src. And there is another configuration that we have to do, and it is in out directory. Means once our TypeScript code is compiled, this out directory is the location where JavaScript code will go. So I will call it build. So yes, these are the two main configurations that we had to make. Now I am going to make the folder src, and in this folder I will be making index.ts file. This is the file, and as you know, in programming every good thing starts with hello world. So yeah, here it is, hello world. So this is basically we are testing that our TypeScript code is getting compiled properly into appropriate JavaScript code. So for that we need to write a script, and I'm going to remove this test script from here, and I'm going to write here, let's say watch ts. This is going to be the name of the script. No, not 0. Yeah. So here we are going to make use of our tool tsc watch, and it is going to use a flag called on success. And whenever this TypeScript compilation is successful, we want tsc watch to run another script which will be called npm script, and this is what we are going to be calling. No, there is some problem over here, double quotes, and you delete it. I think this will come over here. Yeah, right. So what this script will do is, whenever this TypeScript compilation is successful, this tsc watch tool will call this script. But because, sorry, it should not be script, it should be npm start. So I'm going to make this script, I'm going to call it start, and here I'm just simply going to write node, and if you remember, we set here build. So this folder, I'm going to use this build folder, and inside of this folder we will have index.js file. So what this script start is all about is that we are going to use node, and yes, of course, node should be installed on your PC. It is important, otherwise you won't be able to execute JavaScript code. So we are going to instruct node to look for index.js file inside of this build folder and execute this file index.js. Okay, so that's what it's all about. So now we are going to run this script. First we have to save it. Next we are going to run this watch ts script and see if our index.ts code is getting compiled into appropriate JavaScript code. So I'm going to npm run watch ts. Let's see if it runs successfully, and yeah, we are seeing hello world being printed, so it means it is working. And as you can see, build folder has been made automatically, and inside we have index.js file where it is getting compiled into JavaScript code. So yes, our project has been set up correctly. So before we actually set up our GraphQL server, I want to give a very quick intro of the project that we are going to build today. It is going to be a very simple project, and it has a superhero theme, Marvel superhero. So we will be performing 4 main operations in this project: creating, reading, updating, and deleting data from a fake database. Basically it is going to be a fake database, and these are the two main entities that we are going to have in our project. Superhero, which will have these properties: ID, name, strength, and weapon ID. And weapon ID is basically optional because some superhero might not have any weapon, so it is optional. And these are the types of these properties. And every superhero, well, some superheroes might have a weapon, and it will be in the form of a weapon ID, and this weapon ID points to ID inside of this entity called weapon. Okay, so these are connected, something like this we can say. So weapon will have ID, name, and damage. So these are the three properties that I chose for this project. So yes, these are the two main entities we will be dealing with in this project. Now let us start setting up our project. So now we will have to install some dependencies. We will have to install some packages, and the first one will be, of course, GraphQL, and we are going to be using another package which will be called Apollo server. Apollo server will be used to set up a GraphQL server. So this is what we are going to be using. So let us install these two packages, and we will also be needing Axios. So I'm going to install Axios as well. So these three packages, we have to install them, and meanwhile these packages are getting installed. You can tell me in the comments have you ever worked with GraphQL before, because you might be familiar with REST APIs, but GraphQL is it might be a new technology for you all. So let me know in the comments. And these packages are installed, and we will also be needing some type definition packages because we are using TypeScript. So when we use TypeScript, there is always a little bit of extra work, but it always pays off. So we are going to be installing types/GraphQL. So it is basically a type definition package for GraphQL, and we will also be installing types/node. These are the two types packages that we need, and I'm going to install them as a dev dependency. So I will allow these packages to install. Okay, so now that these packages have installed, we can set up our server, and I'm going to close these files because we don't need this. So here, first of all, we are going to import Apollo server from the package Apollo server. And next we will be needing another package which will be standalone. Okay, I don't know if it is a named import or a default import. So let's do it like this: from @Apollo server /standalone. Yeah, this is the file, and I think it is start. Yeah, here it is, start standalone server. So this is what we are going to be needing. And here we have to create an instance of Apollo server. So const server is equals to new Apollo server, and here we have to pass in one argument which is called config, and this config will be in the form of an object. So temporarily I'm passing in a blank object, but we will be passing some properties in this object. So server is ready. Now we need to make use of this start standalone server, and if I'm not wrong, it is a function, start standalone server, and it takes an argument called server, and this server is the one that we have just created. And second, it also takes an argument options, so it will be in the form of an object. Okay, and if I hit control plus space bar, you can see that I have these two options. Context is something which we will be not using for this project, but we will be using listen. And in this listen, we have another object, and it has a property called port. And this port will be 8000. So basically I want my GraphQL server to start on port 8000. So that's why I have specified it over here. And this start standalone server always returns a promise. So for that I will have to await it. And because we are using await outside of an async function, so it's giving error. So what we will have to do is, first we will have to make an async function, and I will call it start server. And in this function we are going to await this start standalone server, and this will return an object, and that object will have a property called URL. So we will be able to access this URL like this, and temporarily I'm just logging it to the console like this. So we will use backtext, and I will say server started at, and here is URL. So this is where we can access our server, and of course we need to call our function start server. So now as you can see, everything is setting up correctly, but there's one error that we have. We cannot pass a blank object. As you can see, TypeScript is helping us that we cannot pass a blank object to this type, and I'm totally going to ignore this because it is something that we don't need. So here we need to pass two main properties, and it turns out that we can pass any properties, but we will be only dealing with two main properties. The first one is going to be this type defs. This is going to be the one, and second one is going to be resolvers. So yeah, this brings us to the question, what is type defs and what is resolvers? You know, when we are working with GraphQL, these are the two most important things that we have to set up before we can actually start our GraphQL server. So I'm going to start by telling you what are type defs. Type defs is basically a file. It can be considered as a schema file, where we are going to define what will be the structure of our GraphQL server. In this file, we are going to list down all the operations, all the things, all the values and their types that will be, that we will be working with in our GraphQL server. So basically, if I want to have a method of, let's say, adding a superhero, then I will have to explicitly tell GraphQL that this is a method, and this method will have these values. It will require these values, it will return this value, and we also need to specify the types of those values, because as you know, GraphQL is a query language. So of course we need to define a schema, and that is why we have type defs. Okay, and next we have is resolvers. So resolvers is also going to be a file where we are going to write the functions. In type defs file, we are telling GraphQL like what all operations will be there, but in resolvers we will be telling GraphQL that whenever client asks you to perform this operation, this is what you have to do. So in resolvers we will be actually writing function, proper TypeScript function, and whenever client tries to do that operation, this function will be executed. So it was an overview, and if you don't get it, please don't panic, because right now we are going to create these two files, and now that will give you better understanding of what these are. So I'm going to just make two files in the src folder itself. Look, I am going to tell you that it is not a best practice, but because this is a small project, so we can do it over here only. Type defs.ts, and I'm going to make another file which will be called resolvers.ts, and type defs, inside of this I'm going to export an object, export const type defs, and it is basically going to be a special string, and it will be defined with the help of backtext only. And inside of every type def file there is always a root query, and we write it something like this, type query, and inside of this we explicitly define GraphQL like what all things we are going to access, what are the entities that we have. And because we have two entities, so I'm going to write here heroes, and this is the one, and yeah, heroes, and the second one is weapons. These are the two main fields that we are going to be accessing. And we also need to specify like what will be actually the hero. So type hero, and inside of this, as I told, that we have a property called id, and it will be of the type integer, so int, and it is required, so I need to put an exclamation mark at the end. Next, what we have is name, so it will be of the type string. It is also required, so same thing. I'm not sure if it is capital S or small s. Let's go with capital S. If we get error, we will figure it out. So it's the hero name. Then we have is strength, GTH, strength, and it is also of the type string, and it is required. Next we have is weapon ID, which is optional, right? It can be null, it can have some integer value. So I'm going to write it int, and I'm not going to put any question mark, which means that it can either be int or it can be null. So this is our hero type. Next we are going to define one more type, which is going to be weapon. Okay, weapon. So inside of this weapon, we will have a property called id. It will be of the type int, which is mandatory. Next is name, which is string, and it is mandatory. And we have is damage, which is also string and required. So here we are basically defining the type of both the entities that we are going to be dealing with. And when we ask GraphQL to return us all the data of the hero, so we will be using this particular query, and it will return us an array of hero. So yeah, this is how we tell. So heroes, it is a query which will return an array of hero, basically an array of object which will be of this type. And similarly, weapons will return an array of weapon, not s, weapon. So this is how we tell GraphQL. This is how basically we write the schema. Our type devs file is ready. I can save it, and now we need to write the resolvers file. So again, same thing, export const resolvers. It is basically going to be an object. And there's one interesting thing about resolvers and type devs. It is that they are very closely related. Like if we have one property called query, then there has to be a property inside of this object called resolvers, which has to be exactly of this type, query. If we have hero, then yes, we can have hero and weapon also, but query is definitely needed. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it over here, and it is going to be again an object, because as you can see, inside of this query we have two other things called heroes and weapons. So inside of this query I'm going to make heroes. First one is going to be heroes, and this is going to be a function, because as I told, resolvers is a file which has functions. So heroes. Next one is weapons, so it is also going to be a function. So as you can see, in type devs we have query which has heroes and weapons. So in resolvers also we have query which has heroes and weapons. So I'm going to save this also, and now inside of our index.ts I'm going to import these two files, import type devs from this, and I'm also going to import resolvers from here. And now okay, so here I'm going to import it as type devs, something like this. So now we can use JavaScript ES6 syntax. It has automatically set the value of these properties, and now as you can see, error has also gone, and we can now test it out. I'm going to save this. So if we run this script now, it was called watch.ts. If I call this script now, from here npm run watch.ts. If I execute it over here, it should start the server, and now we should see a console log. Yeah, server started at localhost 8000. So it has started a GraphQL server at port 8000. And because we are using Apollo server, so we are going to get a playground to try out things in our Apollo server. We don't need an actual client for doing all those operations. We can use this playground itself. So if I control and click on this link, it will open up a window in my browser, and as you can see that there are certain things that I've already done before actually starting to make this project. So I need to delete all these. So this is the playground that we are going to have, and here we are going to work with GraphQL. Okay, so as you can see, it is already giving us the hint heroes and weapons, as we have already defined them in our schema and in our resolvers file. So it is giving us hint over here. So every GraphQL query always start with the field query. Query is basically, it will be used to fetch all the data that we have. So query, and if I hit control spacebar, you can see that I'm also getting hint over here, heroes and weapons. So I'm going to write here heroes, and because we have already defined what will be the type of hero, what all properties are going to be inside of this hero, so it is giving me hints over here, ID, name, strength and weapon ID. So I'm going to use name, and if I run this query, I'm going to get an error because there are multiple reasons. First reason is that I don't have any data anywhere so far. Okay, and the second reason is that our resolvers don't have any function. It is just dummy function, just an anonymous arrow function which does nothing. So it is not ready, but just to give you a feel of what GraphQL is, this is how it looks like. We are going to write queries which starts with the word query. It has we have, as we have already defined it in our schema, heroes and weapons. So we can have this, and and if you don't want heroes, you can also look for weapons. And for weapons, as you can see, because of the schema, we are getting these hints. It has ID, name and damage. Let's say I want name and I also want damage. So now you can query for all the weapons and for these two properties specifically. Means this query will instruct GraphQL server to go ahead in the database and fetch all the weapons, but return only these two properties from those objects. So it might sound a little confusing because we have not done it so far. So next we are going to work on this. For that, first we have to set up a dummy database. So I have a very good solution for that. So it is coming up next. Alright everyone, now we have to set up a fake database for our project, and for that we will be using this amazing package called JSON server. JSON server, it will be used, we can use this to get a REST API server out of the box, and that is what we are going to use. So let's copy this command and come into our terminal, quit it for a while, and let's install our new package, JSON server. I'm going to control paste and npm install JSON server. JSON server, what a brilliant idea, like setting up a fake database, setting up a fake server. As we work along this package in this project, you will get to know what an amazing package this JSON server is, really. So yes, while it is getting installed, let's wait a little bit. And it is installed, JSON server. And in order to start working with this fake server, we need to make a new file, and I am going to call it db.json. It is going to be a JSON file, and in here I have prepared some dummy data which we are going to just put it over here. Okay, I'm sorry, it is not the right one. Can you please wait for a second? I will bring in the data. I will just copy it and I will paste it. Just a while, I will be back. So after creating this file, I'm going to paste some fake data. You can get it from my GitHub code. It will be online. So you can get this fake data. This is basically JSON data where we have this one property called heroes, and next we have this property called weapons. Heroes is basically an array of objects, and as you know that every object has these four properties as I told earlier. So it is basically Steve Rogers, Super Soldier, and weapon ID is 1, and this ID 1, as I told, it corresponds to this particular weapon that superhero will have. So ID 1 shield and its damage is moderate. Tony Stark, genius engineer 3, and you can read all this data. So this is a fake data that we have for working with our database. Okay, so yes, now what we are going to do is we are going to use this database to fetch all the data. Basically, we have written this query. Here it is. We have written this query, but because we were not having any data to work with, this error is coming because we have quit our server. So that's the reason. And right now we were not having any data, so we could not fetch that. So now let us write functions in this resolver file. This heroes function will be basically executed when we write this query for all the heroes. So now we need to find a way of interacting with this file. Okay, we need to find a way to interact with this file. We have made this database, and in order to interact with this database, we are going to make a script, and I'm going to call it watch db, and we are going to make use of the package that we have installed. It is JSON server, and here I'm going to put flag called watch, and I'm going to point at the file db.json. So basically this package JSON server will watch for all the changes that might happen in this file db.json, because we will be performing operations such as create, update, delete, and all those operations will affect this file directly. So it will watch for all the changes in this file, watch db. And as soon as I execute this script, npm run, first let's restart our server, npm run watch ts, and it should start properly. Yeah, it has started. Now in a new terminal, I'm going to execute this new script, npm run watch db, and as you can see that it is giving us these URLs, http localhost 3000. So basically this server has started at this URL 3000/heroes. This is an endpoint. This is a REST API endpoint. Means we can use this endpoint to fetch all the data that is present. So if we use this URL heroes, we will be able to fetch this array, this entire array, which is basically property of value of heroes property. So, and if we use this weapons URL, we will be able to fetch all the data inside of the weapon. Let me give you a quick demo of this REST API. I'm going to copy this URL, and I'm going to use another tool called Postman. Let it open. So this Postman is an app where we can test our REST APIs. So I'm going to paste this URL over here, and it is going to be a GET request. And if I send this request, you will see that I have got an array of objects, and this is basically the fake data that we have in our db.json file. Similarly, if instead of heroes I use weapons, I will be able to get all the weapons data. So here it is. So this is what we are going to do. This is how we are going to access our data using this REST API. So we are not going to be using Postman. We will be doing this in our resolvers. So for that, we need to make use of Axios. Import Axios from Axios, and because this is an asynchronous operation, so I have to make it an async function. Okay, so inside of this function, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use axios.get, and this is a URL that we are going to use to fetch all the data. And because this is an async function, so I'm going to await it. And as you might know, if you have used Axios before, it always returns an object which has a property called data, and this data will be our variable that will have all the data coming from the database. So for now, I'm just going to log this to the console and see if it is working properly or not. Let's save it. Now we have our heroes function in place, and from this playground, if I make a query for heroes and if I try to access the name and let us say strength of the hero, so right now it is not going to work. I'm just going to give you a little hint. It is going to return null. We are not going to get any data over here, but there's something that is going to happen in the backend server console because we are logging data to the console. So let's see if it works. As expected, we have got null over here, but in backend server, yes, we are getting an array of objects. So looks like it is working. Now instead of just logging it to the console, I'm simply going to return this data, something like this. Okay, so yes, if I return this data, if I save it, now it will no longer be printed in the console, and we will get, oh no, we are getting null. Cannot return null for non-nullable fields hero.name. I don't know why I'm getting this. Heroes name strength. Any error? No error over here. Return data. Heroes async is the problem over here. Heroes query, it returns an array. Let me make it non-nullable. Could this be the error? Let me see now if it works properly or not. Actually, it says cannot return null for non-nullable field hero.named. I don't think it is going to work here. Right. So what is the problem exactly over here? Why it is not working? Axios.get localhost 3000 heroes async await data type definitions heroes hero this type in index.ts. I have type definitions, resolvers, everything is in place. Type definitions, resolvers is also here. Why it is not giving the data right way? I am returning this. Heroes is here. Should work. I don't know why it is not working. We are getting data, but there is some problem with the return statement. We are returning the data also, and inside of type definition I have said that it will be of the type hero. It's of the type string. So what exactly is the problem? If I make it non-nullable for a while, will this solve the problem? Let me see. And it turns out that the name is coming out to be null. Why name is coming null? We are getting strength, which is all this is coming fine, but name is coming null. Let me see, let me figure out why it is coming null. Let's put back this as non-nullable, and name is coming out to be null. Okay, that is because we have full name over here, right? So instead of full name, I'm going to write name. So now it is going to work. Let's save all and let's try once again. We were actually trying to access a property called name, but in our DB it was saved as full name. My bad, I apologize. So now let us try it once again, and inside of type defs I'm going to set it back to non-nullable. Save it once again. And now let us try it. And yeah, yes, we are getting an array of objects, and as you can see that let me show you the difference between REST API and GraphQL. This is a good point. If I try to access all the data from this endpoint, it is going to return all the 4 properties to me. Let us suppose that now I just want to work with name. I don't want any of other 3 properties. But if I use REST API, I don't have any other option. It will return me all these properties, no matter if I want to use only one. But if I use GraphQL, I can explicitly tell that you have to get me only the name. I don't want any other thing, I just want the name. If I run this query, it will give me exactly this data. So that is the beauty of GraphQL. So I want you to take a minute and really appreciate this technology, GraphQL. So our one big problem has been solved, and as we go ahead in this project, I will tell you how our second problem will also be solved. So for now we are getting heroes, okay, and if I want to access the strength, yes, you got it, you will get the strength also. If I want to access weapon ID, okay, here we have weapon ID. Whatever you want, GraphQL will give you exactly that. So that is the beauty of GraphQL. And just to give you a little practice, I really encourage you to implement this weapons on your own. It will be extremely similar to this. So just to get you a little practice, I really recommend you to do it on your own. However, you will find the completed code at the end in my GitHub repository. Link will be given in the description box. You can always go ahead and check that out. So yeah, this is all about queries. Okay everyone, let's do something interesting now. So far, as you can see, we are fetching weapon ID, but as you might guess that weapon ID might not be useful. Like I might want to know the weapon name of the weapon name which is possessed by Steve Rogers. So we are just getting weapon ID 1, and you can tell anything about it, like what that weapon is, what its damage is. So now I want to fetch actually the weapon detail which is possessed by any superhero. So here I want to give you by a hint that we will have to modify this schema. So far we have been working with primitive data types, we can say, like integer, string. So it is fine for GraphQL. But now if we want details of a weapon, we will have to specify a new property over here, weapon details, let's call it, and it will be of the type weapon. Basically it will this weapon details property will point to an object which will be of the type weapon. So that way, if we access this weapon details in our GraphQL query, we will be able to use the name, damage and all these things. So let's give it a try. Let's save it and let's come over here. Instead of weapon ID, I'm going to call it weapon details, and as you can see, it has already started giving us the hint because we have specified that it is of the type weapon. So I'm going to use the name over here, and just to give you a little bit of hint, this is going to fail. It is going to return null. So let's see. As you can see, we have got null over here. Why is that happening? Because GraphQL doesn't know actually like what it is about. We will have to write a query for this hero and this weapon to work together, because for primitive data types it is just fine with GraphQL. It is integer, it is string, integer, okay, fine. But when GraphQL sees this weapon, it gets confused, and we have to tell GraphQL once again like what exactly it has to do, okay, because there are these many weapons. So what exactly you are looking for, this is what GraphQL is saying. So let's take care of that. Okay, so as you can see, again we are going to use this type defs to make things work in resolvers. We have hero. Inside of this hero we have weapon details, so I'm just going to copy this, and over here what I'm going to do is, besides query, I'm going to make hero, and this is again going to be like this, and here is my weapon details. This is now going to be no, one second, wait, I have to check it once. Hero weapon details. So yeah, I think this is how it is going to work. And now what we want to do is, we want to fetch the details of a weapon based on the weapon ID, because as you can see, every superhero has a weapon ID. Okay, so based on this weapon ID, I want to fetch the other details of this weapon. So how this is going to work, let me show you. Inside of this Postman app, I'm going to type here weapons, and for this particular ID 1, if I can get hold of this ID somehow, because if we just directly do it, okay, first let me show you in the Postman app, then I will tell you in the GraphQL. So for this, if I try to do, it will give me the details of exactly this ID. It has ID 1, and it will give me the other details of this. So this is basically the way we are going to do it. We are going to use this URL to fetch the details. But if you cannot see, there is a problem. So like, let's make the function for this also, asynchronous function, and now following the similar syntax, data is equals to await axios dot get, paste, and we can get hold of this particular weapon. But as you can already see, this ID is hard coded over here. We don't want it to be hard coded, because it can be for anything. Like if I'm trying to fetch for all these things, so of course not everyone has a weapon ID of 1. For Steve Rogers it is 1. Let me show you in the database. For Steve Rogers, this weapon ID is 1. For Tony Stark, this weapon ID is 3. For Clint Barton, it is 2. So everyone have different weapon ID. So how about we can get this weapon ID dynamically from the parent itself, because in parent, which is this hero, see, we are trying to access weapon details over here. Okay, this is of the type weapon, but it is inside of this query called hero. Okay, so we can say that this is a nested query. We can say that hero is the child query basically. Okay, sorry, I said it wrong. Hero is the parent query. So inside of this hero we have weapon ID. So if we can get hold of this weapon ID somehow, our problem will be solved. We will be able to pass that weapon ID over here dynamically, and we can fetch data for that weapon with that ID. So there is a very good way that GraphQL provides us, and we can basically pass some arguments in this function. The first one is parent value. Okay, this is what I like to call it, parent value, and the second one is called args. This is what we are going to use, and there is also a third one called context, but we are not going to use context in this project, so let's skip it. Args, this is what we are going to use. Inside of this args, I'm so sorry, I said it wrong. We are going to be using parent value, because as you can guess, parent value, it is going to contain the details of the parent, which is basically the hero. Okay, so that is what we are going to use. And as you might have guessed, we have not used TypeScript so far. So yes, this is the time we are using TypeScript. This will be an object which will have a property called weapon ID, and it will be of the type number. Okay, and yeah, we can say this because hero has a property called weapon ID. It is of the type integer. So this is what we are going to specify over here. Weapon details, async function, and this function has one argument called parent value, which will have a property called weapon ID. So now I'm going to make use of this. I'm going to replace this with a string literal, and over here I'm going to paste it, and inside of one I'm going to replace it with parent value dot weapon ID, like this. And now we will be able to fetch the data of a weapon with the given weapon ID, and it will come over here in this data. So I'm just going to return this data over here like this. Now hopefully we should not see null, because we have specified that inside of hero we are looking for a nested query which is called weapon details, and its return type will be weapon as specified over here. Sorry, not here, here, like this, weapon details. So now because we have made nested queries, so now it should work. Let's check this out. Weapon details name, if I run this, and yes, weapon details name is shield. So Steve Rogers have weapon whose name is shield. Tony Stark has a weapon called arc reactor, and Clint Barton has a weapon called bows and arrows. So if I also want to see the damage, yes, I can. If I don't want to see the strength, totally fine. Here it is. So exactly the data that we want, and GraphQL work. So that is the reason why I chose to put this property called weapon ID over here, so that we can work things out basically. So yeah, this is all about nested queries in GraphQL. Next, we are going to level up our project a little bit, and now we are going to start making mutations. We are going to add a new superhero, we are going to update and delete. Alright, now it's time to mutate data. Add some new heroes, maybe weapons, update them, delete them, and do all the good stuff. And so it all starts with type definition file. We have specified query, and now if you want to mutate, we have to specify mutations. Mutations, let's call it mutation only. Mutation, and in this we are going to give the name of the mutation, what all values it will have, and their types. So let us say that I want to add a new hero. So it will be a mutation called add hero, and there are certain things that we will have to pass, because if we want to add a new hero, we will have to at least give it a name, their strength, and weapon ID if they have a weapon. Okay, so let's take care of that. So first of all, it is going to be a name which is going to be of the type string. It is not a label, so exclamation mark. Then we have is the strength, GTH strength, and it will also be of the type string. It is also not nullable. We are going to provide weapon ID as well, and it is going to be int, but it is optional, so I'm not going to put any exclamation mark in the end. So that automatically makes it optional. And we also need to specify the return type. When it has performed some operation, it has to return something. Okay, so actually it is basically going to be a post request. We are going to make a post request, and generally it is a good idea, whenever a post request is made, we must return the array of all those objects which are there in that entity. So we are going to return the array of hero, and to me it makes sense that it should not be nullable, but if some error occurs, we can just return null. So I'm not going to set it to non-nullable. So this is how mutations is written in schema. Type mutation and the name of the mutation, what all arguments it is going to have, and its return type. So once it is added in the schema, we also need to add it in the resolvers. So let's copy this mutation, and besides hero, I want to keep this something like this, then inside of this object we will have add hero. Copy this, paste it over here, add hero, and again this is also going to be an asynchronous function. And now we are going to again make use of the arguments that we get inside of this function. The first, as I told you, is the parent value. Second one is the args. Now inside of this args we are going to get all the properties that we pass. We are supposed to pass a name, we are supposed to pass a strength, and we are supposed to pass weapon ID if that superhero has a weapon. So all these properties, we can get access to these inside of this args. This is where it is going to be helpful. And for this we are not going to make use of parent value, so I can just remove it. Well, actually I can remove it, so I can set it to any type, something like this. So it will remove this error, and it is saying that it has any type by default. So in order to fix this, we can make use of TypeScript. I'm going to make here an interface, and I will call it add hero args. And inside of this we are going to have an ID, well, not an ID, it will be created automatically. We are going to have name, which will be of the type string. Next we are going to have strength, which is going to be of the type string, and we are going to have a weapon ID, and this is going to be an optional, and it is going to be of the type number, something like this. This is the interface. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to say that args will be of this type. Okay, so yes, this is the mutation. We have done it something like this. Now we have to make a post request. So again we will be using Axios, but this time the post method, and this post request will go on this particular URL, localhost 3000/heroes. Post request will be made on this URL, and ID will be assigned automatically by JSON server. And now we have to put the body, and this body will be passed in the form of an object. It has to have a name, which will be basically args.name. So what we are doing over here is we are basically grabbing this name from the args and assigning it inside of this body name. Next what we have is strength, okay, and args.strength. Next we have is I think weapon ID, and it is coming from args.weapon ID. But here's the trick, because weapon ID is optional, so we have to put a check. If it exists, then set it to weapon ID like this, otherwise just set it to null. Okay, so of course not every superhero has a fixed weapon, so for those who do not have, they can set null over there. So now we are making this post request, and for this post request it will return us some data. So it is data coming from Axios, and we are going to just return this data. Okay, so we have basically set up in our type definitions a mutation called add hero. We will be supplying name, strength, weapon ID, and it will return us with an object of heroes, and this newly provided hero will also come in this array. So we expect our new hero to be get added in the team, in the Avengers team, and we expect that hero to be in the array. So let's save this, and now we are going to give it a try in our playground. Now we are not going to use query anymore, so inside of this new tab I'm going to use mutation. Okay, and over here if you hit Control spacebar, you will see an option called add hero. Now I really recommend you do it this way because there is a very good reason behind that. We will get autocomplete. So if you click enter over here, you will see that it has automatically entered some of these fields for us. Because it is a post request and we have already specified in our schema that we will be passing these fields, and these two are non-nullable and this is optional. So it has already given us this particular, kind of an autocomplete feature. And I really don't want to get into the details of all these things. We can say that this is how Apollo server works. Simple as that. So if I want to give weapon ID also, I can just do something like this, and it has to come inside this, and it will be comma over here. Okay, so inside of we are not going to do anything here. We are just going to supply our data over here in this variables tab. So name, I'm going to call Natasha Romanov, and her strength is combat, and she does not have any weapon. So I'm just going to not enter inside anything in this weapon. Let's get rid of this comma, and I don't want any weapon ID, so let's get rid of this and remove this also. So now, because it is going to return us an array of heroes, so if I click spacebar over here, you can see these options. I want to see all the names, and I also want to see the strength of all the superheroes. So basically now with every mutation we can also do the functionality of query, because it will return us the array of heroes. So yeah, we can do that. Now let's try this out. If I hit this run, I expect this response to be an array of objects. Okay, so let's see. And I'm getting an error. Expected iterable but did not find one for field mutation.add hero. Okay, there appears to be some error. Let's see what it is. Axios.post. Let me try and add a console log for this data. Let's see what this data is. Save it once again, and we'll see. Let's try making a request one more time, and as it turns out that it is returning me only this. Okay, so that is the problem. The data which is coming from JSON server, it is just this object, and over here we have said that it will be an array of objects. So what we have to do over here is, after doing this, we have to make another request, and that will be, I can get rid of this, and instead of doing something like this, I can make sure that data is basically now await axios.get. Okay, this is the, but I want to tell you that our post request succeeded because we are getting this object in our response, so it succeeded. And to prove you can see that db.json now has a new property called Natasha Romanov. ID 5, weapon ID null, strength combat, Natasha Romanov, exactly the data that we gave. So yes, our post request succeeded, but there was some error with the response type. So I'm going to now fetch all the data, because JSON server is made in a way that it returns only the newly added object, but because we want all the objects, an array of object, so I'm going to fetch it manually. Localhost 3000 / heroes, something like this. Now this is the data we will get. Now we will get an array, and let's see, I'm going to return this data. Okay, so let's try adding a new hero, and over here let's say Bruce Banner, strength, magnanimous strength, and weapon, we will have to specify first here weapon ID. And this right now, as you can see, that we don't have weapon created in our dummy database. So I'm just going to add manually over here ID of 4, and I'm going to give it a name, and it will be, let's say, weapon in itself. Doesn't make much sense, but that's alright. It's just a small project. Damage, and I'm going to assign height to this. I'm going to save our database. Okay, and now I'm going to assign this ID 4 to Bruce Banner. Weapon ID, here we, instead of null, I'm going to set it to 4. So okay, now I'm asking, I'm looking for name, strength, I'm looking for weapon details. Inside of this, I want to see the name also. So these are the things that I'm looking for. Let's make this post request and see now if it works. And yes, it works. Steve Rogers, Shield, Tony Stark, Arc Reactor, Clint Barton, Natasha Romanoff, weapon details null, as expected. And it turns out that we have got this twice. I don't know, maybe some bug. We will fix this. Let's see. And this is also done. And Bruce Banner, yes, it is appearing now. For just to confirm, as you can see, we have, I don't know why it got created once again, but okay, I'm going to manually modify this. So let's see. Okay, Bruce Banner is also done. It has been added in the database, so our post request succeeded basically. So this was adding a hero. Okay, now let us work on updating a hero. So I'm going to call another mutation update hero, and in order to update a hero, first there are a few things that we will have to provide. These 3 things will be same over here also, because if we want to update, so we need to provide name, strength and weapon ID. But along with these 3 properties, I also need to provide the ID property of the superhero, ID, which will be of the type int, and it is non-nullable. And if I paste all these things over here, and its return type will also be now same, hero array. And now again it is also nullable, means it can return a null value. For some reason, if our update operation fails, so it can return null basically. So again the same thing, I'm going to grab this update hero, come into resolvers, and besides add hero, I'm going to put update hero, which is going to be an async function, something like this. And again we will not be needing this parent value argument, so I can set it to any. And next we are going to need args. Now this args will be of the type, well actually I can take a shortcut over here. I add hero args. As you can see that 3 properties are same, there is just one new property called ID. So I'm just going to make this interface with a little modification. Sorry, it is not this. I add hero args, and in TypeScript we have this and along with this I can add ID, which will be of the type number, not semicolon, something like this. So basically what it does is it will combine these 2. It will have all the 3 properties, and it will also add ID in it. So it is a shortcut, we can take it for this project because it is not so big project. So yeah, we can do that. Update hero. So now first, before updating, it is always a good practice to see if a record exists with the given ID or not. Because let's say that for some reason, if we are trying to update a record that doesn't even exist, then of course it doesn't make much sense, right? So first of all, we will have to check whether a record exists or not. So again we are going to make use of Axios. Data is equals to await Axios.get. So I'm going to be using template literals. So what I'm going to do is I will see that if some data exists, if some superhero exists with the given ID or not. And if it does not exist with this given ID, we are just going to return null. So http://localhost 3000 slash heroes slash id, and this id will be provided args.id. so if it exists, now we are going to put an if check. So if data is a falsy value, so we are just going to return null. So if no data exists, then we just cannot update it, right? So we are returning null. Now if this if check fails, so it clearly means that we have a record, there exists some data. Okay, so now all we are going to do is we are just going to update it. So for that, again we will be using axios dot, this time we will be using the put method, and inside of this put method, first we have to specify the URL, and this URL will be the same. So I'm just going to copy paste this, copy and paste. This is going to be the URL, and inside of this put we also have to supply the data. It will be in the form of object, and here because we already have the ID, so now we are going to give the name, which will be args.name. Next the strength, which will be args.strength. Next we have weapon ID, and it will be because it is optional, so we'll have to give a check. If it is there, then args.weapon ID, otherwise null. Same as we did in add heroes. Well, quite same. So if this succeeds, axios.put. So this is the method we have written. Now this method should update the record with this particular ID. Okay, and once this is done, because I have set that the return type will be an array of hero, and I assume that just like post method, JSON server will return us the only object which it has updated. So for that I will have to make one more request to get all the things. HTTP, well, let's copy paste localhost/heroes. So that I will just copy and paste it over here. Await this axios.get, and I'm going to get hold of this const data, and I'm going to destructure it from here, and because we are already using data over here, so I'm going to give it an alias, and I'm going to call it all heroes, and not as but a column, yeah, all heroes. And now we are just going to return all heroes. Good. So this is how update hero is going to work. Let's check this out. And there is one more thing that we can do, and as you can see that if it returns null, okay, fine, it will work, right? So let's check this out. Update hero. So I will come over here, control all, mutation object, update hero, and it has given me the autocomplete. So now as you can see, we have also our update hero ID over here, right? So let's say that I want to update the record of who? Let's update the record of Clint Barton. Okay, so it has he has an ID 3. Let's assign this hero ID to be 3. Wait a minute, there's something wrong over here. Update hero ID. Okay, no, it's fine. Is not allowed. I don't think it is the problem. Bruce Banner Clint Barton. I'm going to keep the name same, and I'm going to strength is combat and archery. I'm going to update his strength. Weapon ID is supposed to be same. Weapon ID is 2, so I will be keeping this as 2 only. Okay. Now let us say that I want to have the name. Name. I want to have weapon details and name of this also. It is giving me weapon ID is not allowed. That is because it is not let's set over here. Weapon ID. Okay. So now I must see an array of updated data. Let's check this out. And it turns out that Steve Rogers, Tony Stark, Clint Barton, and bow and arrows. What is the thing? Okay, I have updated this. I updated the strength, so I need to see the strength also. Let's see. Combat and archery. Yes, it got updated. Okay, so our update mutation is also working, and I also want to see if, let's say, if I pass 30. So as you know that there is no hero with ID 30. So if I pass that, let's see if it works or not. If I run and request failed with status code 404. Okay, so it is failing, right? Yeah, so again, same thing. This is the update hero mutation. Now there is only one more mutation left, and that is delete. So I'm going to add delete hero, and all it is going to take is ID and nothing else. Int, but it is not nullable, it is required, and it is just going to return hero, the record which has just got deleted. So this is the one. Let's copy this, come into resolvers, and besides update hero, here is my delete hero, which is again be an asynchronous operation, and in this we are going to need the args. So again the same, it will be of the type any. Next is we have args, which will be of the type ID, which will be of the type number. This is the type, and here is our function async arrow. Yeah, now types. And inside of this we are going to use the axios const, but first of all we will have to see if any hero exists with this ID or not. So again the same thing, I'm going to copy this and paste it over here. It is going to just check if a hero exists with this ID or not. If this data is a falsy value, just return null, don't do anything. And now if we pass this if check, so it means that data exists, some record is there in the database, and now we have to delete it. So await axios dot delete, and this URL will be same. So I can just grab this, copy, and I can paste it over here. Yeah, this is the only thing that we need to do, and of course we need to get hold of the response from the axios data, and I'm going to give it an alias which will be deleted record. Okay, this is the nickname given to the data, and I'm just going to return deleted record. Let's save this and let us check this out. And for now I don't want Natasha Romanoff to be in the team, so let's delete. Let's try this out. Mutation, I can see here delete hero. So delete hero ID, that is only I need, and I can remove all these. Okay, and delete hero, what is the ID of Natasha Romanoff? It is 4. So let's give ID 4, something like this, and I'm going to access the name, I'm going to access the strength, I'm going to access weapon details and the name. So name should be Natasha Romanoff, strength should be combat, weapon details should be null. Let's see, and it should be removed from our database. cannot return null, and again we are getting an error, cannot return null for non-nullable fields, hero.name. Okay, there is some problem over here. I see what it is, but I'm sure that our operation has succeeded. As you can see that this Natasha Romanov record has been deleted from the database. I don't know why it is not showing up over there, but it has been deleted. Means this is working. So that's okay. If it is working, we can figure this out. Actually, this problem came with me before also. Deletion operation was successful, but I was not getting the data over here. So that is not a problem. We can find a workaround for that. So these are the mutations. I have shown you the add, update, and delete. And just to get you practice with the mutations also, how about you go ahead and try for adding a new weapon, updating a weapon, and deleting a weapon. I have shown you for the hero, and for weapons it will be almost the same. Just these arguments are going to change, and this URL is going to change, and everything other should be same. So why don't you go ahead and give this a try, and you will find the completed code on GitHub, and link will be given in the description box. So make sure that you try out on your own, and then if you get stuck, you can compare with the code against mine. I hope that you have got some confidence on GraphQL. Well, actually basics are ready, so now you can go ahead and make a new project on your own. This will give you even more confidence. So yes, mutations, this was about it.